Hello and welcome to the Growing Healthy Families podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Haggerty. On this show, I interview the world's top health experts so that you can know with certainty what it takes to give your family a life of epic health and wellness.
As parents, we don't want to see our kids struggle. I knew that he had the potential. I knew that something needed to be done.
It was hard. We would get frustrated. We didn't know how to deal with it. I was more emotional about it.
Sure that, we're here. Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Super excited for you to be watching this upcoming episode of the Growing Healthy Families podcast. So moms and dads, I have the privilege on this episode of interviewing a man named Brett Jones. Brett Jones is one of the foremost names in all of exercise and strength and conditioning. He's representing the amazing organization known as StrongFirst, and a company that was created by a man named Pavel Tsatsouline. Pavel Tsatsouline is the person who brought Russian kettlebell training to the United States. He is the former Soviet Special Forces physical training instructor. He became what's called a subject matter expert to the U.S. military and law enforcement. Worked with the Marine Corps, the Secret Service, Navy SEALs, you name it. His training systems have been implemented by special ops units in 2 countries, along with the allies of the U.S. He is the founder of the StrongFirst, which is called the School of Strength. So he brought what's called this low-tech, high-concept methods to achieving high performance, resilience to all, not just elite warriors and athletes. Moms and dads, this stuff is amazing. He has a sports science degree from the former Soviet Union. He is the author of numerous groundbreaking books. Some that I've read multiple times myself. One of the ones that was kind of a big one for me was one called Enter the Kettlebell. Its follow-up book, The Russian Kettlebell Challenge. A bodyweight book called The Naked Warrior, Power to the People, and tons more. He has a couple of other books that have come out recently. So his most recent release was a book called Simple and Sinister, which was breaking down exercise into 2 simple exercises. One, the Russian kettlebell swing, and an exercise called the Turkish get up. So he has a book that's just been released called The Quick and the Dead. And this is an amazing book for the advanced mentalist, people who are looking to get the most out of fitness, but doing it with simplicity, bringing it down to 2 very powerful exercises with variations that will challenge all of us to become better athletes, become more fit and higher performers. Moms and dads, Brett Jones himself is one of the most accomplished people in all of exercise. He is the Director of Education and a Master SFG, which is what's called a StrongFirst Guru, which means that he is a kettlebell expert. So he is an author. He is the Director of Curriculum and Education. He is a certified athletic trainer, strength and conditioning coach, and he works out of Pittsburgh, PA. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Sports Med from High Point University. He is the CSCS from the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and he is the Master StrongFirst Certified Instructor. So he is the person who he works on, critiques, and edits all of the curriculum for all of the programming at StrongFirst. He is a kettlebell instructor for SFG 1 and 2, which are the 2 levels for the instructors. He is a barbell instructor, so he works with teaching movements like back squats, bench presses, deadlifts, along with some more of the advanced moves. He is a bodyweight instructor, and I'll tell you what, the things he can do with his body are pretty darn incredible. So he has more than 20 years experience in the health and fitness world. He's worked with numerous professional teams, athletes throughout the U.S. and internationally. He has taught kettlebell techniques with Pavel and the principles since as early as 2003. He also works with another organization called Functional Movement Systems. And if you're not familiar with the FMS, moms and dads, they're also amazing. We'll be digging into them a little bit during the conversation today. FMS is an organization that focuses on making sure that we are able to move well, not just being able to achieve strength movements. And we'll dig quite a bit into that. He's created multiple DVDs and manuals with physical therapist Greg Cook, who's the founder of Functional Movement Systems. And he's the 11th person in the world to bend the Iron Mind red nail and has done what's called a beast tamer. We'll talk about those as we get into the podcast. Moms and dads, you're in for a treat. So can't wait to get your feedback on this. Let us know what you think after the episode's done. Hello, moms and dads. This is Dr. Scott Haggerty here with the Growing Healthy Families podcast. Moms and dads, I think this is a super important episode for each and every one of you to watch, because the gentleman here that we've got, Mr. Brett Jones, he is going to really help you to know what is necessary to make sure that your youth athlete is able to have the most amazing performance and help you with your own personal fitness with the amazing things they teach at StrongFirst. So, Brett, first, thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate your time and being on the show today.
I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and your audience, and look forward to the podcast.
Awesome. So Brett, why don't you tell everybody about how you personally became interested in sports performance and strength and conditioning?
The long story of me, kept medium, is that I wrestled in high school, went to get a Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training at High Point University, High Point, North Carolina. And that was kind of my segue into orthopedic evaluation, rehabilitation, handling sports injuries, working with the teams. And went and got a master's and ended up working as an athletic trainer for a couple of years. Transitioned into running a hospital fitness center. And that hospital fitness center, we worked with everybody. We had everything's from just your general senior citizen looking to get fit to Parkinson's, stroke, joint replacements, amputees, high school athletes, college athletes, all across the board, wide swath of the population that I ended up working with. And then around 2001, I got interested in Pavel Satsolin's Pavel's material and got his first book, Power to the People, and started one of his first books, Power to the People, and started deadlifting and doing my presses. And then they came out with kettlebells, and I started reading about kettlebells and got kind of interested and bought the book and took a look at it. And I said, well, I can do all that with a dumbbell. And I threw it in the drawer, and there it sat for 2-3 months. Mm-hmm. But it was always gnawing at the back of my head. So I pulled it back out. I read it, tried a little bit, and I said, I need to go see what this is all about. So I went to the second ever kettlebell certification that Pavel taught in the States in February of 2002. And then I ended up teaching with Pavel in April of 2003. And so for the last 16 plus years, I've been traveling the U.S. and internationally to teach kettlebell training. And now in our expanded, StrongFirst curriculum within the School of Strength. During that time, I also was fortunate enough to be mentored by and work with Gray Cook, and end up teaching with and working with functional movement systems for the last 13 years.
It's amazing that the work that they do at StrongFirst and the work they do with functional movement systems, they work so hand in hand. So moms and dads, if you're not familiar, one of the reasons that we wanted to do this episode today is because so much of what we're taught about fitness is about push yourself hard, and now with a focus on maintenance and function, and the complexity or simplicity of how we train, and the awareness that youth athletes or people who are in general fitness, we have to be aware that we can't push it max all the time. We have to pay attention to how we move and the quality of our movements. We have to pay attention to recovery. And have you found that that's in your practice and in your travels? Have you found that that's something that is an issue?
Oh yeah, and I think we can ballpark that into a couple of different areas in where we have to have a lifestyle conversation. Mm-hmm. Your lifestyle, your habits need to support the things that you would like to accomplish. And then within your exercise, whatever modality or thing you're trying to accomplish, your programming and training load and things of that nature, that needs to match with what your goals are. And so I had an article recently on StrongFirst.com, and Gray has this really great clarifier on the SAID principle. For your listeners that may not know, that's specific adaptation to imposed demands, which is usually interpreted as what you get better at is you get better at what you do constantly. Mm-hmm. There's another way we can expand on that, in that it's the organisms, meaning you, specifics adaptation to the environments, the things that you're doing to yourself, imposed demands. And so if you have an organism / lifestyle problem, you're sleeping 4 hours a night, you're working 2 jobs, your nutrition isn't up to snuff, but you keep trying to tweak the routine, you're trying to tweak the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. We got to take a look at the lifestyle over here and make sure that we're sleeping, that we're properly hydrated, that the nutrition supports it, that our stress, breathing, that are all of these other things that we typically don't consider as part of an exercise routine. Those things need to be dialed in. Now we get to have an exercise conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to separate out which one of those things do I need to work on? If I'm working with a high school athlete and it's a donut for breakfast and the McDonald's at school for the lunch, and they skip lunch, or whatever the case may be, that you can just quickly identify not sleeping enough, stressed out about school, all these other things going on. I kind of don't care what you're doing with the exercise routine. And so you can very quickly start making lists of what is an organism or lifestyle thing that we need to be keeping track of. What is an environment, program design, things of that nature. You might be sleeping poorly, but it might be because of a bad mattress.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lifestyle problem can have an environmental solution, and an environmental problem can have an organism solution. So you just have to filter those and take a look at what's going on. I was asked on a podcast a while back, and what's your favorite recovery strategy? And I'm like, well, proper programming. Because if I program myself appropriately, I should recover from that workload.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm constantly trying to figure out how do I recover from this workload, maybe try doing less. I mean, just as a initial thought, and you might find that things really turn around.
I think that your point there is a great point, because a lot of people don't really think about the importance of the awareness of, what am I putting in? Am I getting enough time in recovery? How long have I been at this level of intensity, and am I cycling? And that's a great awareness point. In the practice here, we oftentimes will talk about, your autonomics, right? The brain's output control for your rest and digest and your sympathetics. And we'll talk about that it's a balance. It's kind of like a teeter-totter that we have to live on. And if we get stuck where we're pushing so hard, it'll tip the scales where we're stuck in this nonstop overdrive of stress. And if we're living in a mode where we're pushing all the time, then we can't recover. And so it has to be a balance, because you have to be able to kick over into recovery mode to make progress, whether it's physical progress, mental or emotional progress. If you can't kick back over into recovery mode, then you're going to start to deteriorate if you stick there for long enough, right?
Absolutely. And that teeter-totter goes in both directions.
Yep.
I have to take you sympathetic and stress you enough so that there's the reason for the body to adapt.
Right.
Then I got to tilt it back towards the parasympathetic and the rest and digest, and let that recovery happen. Yeah. So I'm always on that teeter-totter. Now, hopefully, training is at most a few hours out of a week. Hopefully less, a few hours out of a week, or less.
Yeah.
So hopefully the predominant mode that we're in is that rest and digest, that parasympathetic. But I definitely, you're going to get stressed, and the ability to flip into that other mode is key. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. So when you introduced yourself, you talked about your work with StrongFirst and your work with functional movement systems, and you are a master kettlebell instructor.
Yes.
So would you mind, for the people who aren't familiar with what that means, what does it mean to be a master kettlebell instructor?
So I really have, I'll say, two roles within StrongFirst right now. I'm the director of education. So we do refer to ourselves as the School of Strength. Mm-hmm. And so within the School of Strength, we have 3, and now I think 4 modalities or branches of the School of Strength. We have kettlebell training, barbell training, body weight training. And I think we are amassing this information from Pavel on programming that really places us in a unique position. Mm-hmm. And then, so I teach and run the certifications that we offer within the kettlebell branch, our SFG level 1 and SFG level 2 certifications. And what I'm responsible for as director of education is grooming, editing, adding to or subtracting from the curriculum for all of those branches. And then as the master StrongFirst instructor, I go into the certs and lead and teach and manage the other seniors, team leaders, and assistants in order to make sure that those in attendance have a fantastic StrongFirst experience. Mm-hmm.
So, StrongFirst is a very unique company. And, I will self-disclose, I've been to the user courses, and I'm a practitioner of kettlebells in my own life, along with the bodyweight principles. And I've read almost all of Pavel's books cover to cover multiple times.
Awesome.
And, one of the things that I found very unique from someone who I've been in exercise my entire life. I mean, I was a bodybuilder, power lifter, high level athlete for many years. So So for me, it was very interesting when I went to just the user course, where we focus on the 4 basic movements, right? The Turkish get up, the press, the kettlebell swing, and the goblet squat.
Yeah.
And so when I went to this, it was very interesting because I've been in the exercise field for so long and done so many different things, and I had never been in a place where there was so much put on emphasis on form, technique, quality of movement, making sure that there was a mastery of what we did, but then the education of why it was done and the way that it was done. And so I've always been perpetually impressed by the way that StrongFirst goes about educating people more than anything else on quality of movement, focus on how you take care of your body. And I'd like you to expand because I think StrongFirst is so unique in what it does, but I don't think a lot of people necessarily will be able to go and understand what the difference is between a lot of other exercise companies. So would you mind talking a little bit more about some of the main goals that StrongFirst has in terms of its outreach into the exercise community?
Sure. If the overriding mission of StrongFirst is to pursue, promote, and practice strength, because we believe strength has a greater purpose, and that expands into many areas of life. I know of people in my family who have never touched a kettlebell, barbell, or really done body weight exercise, and they are some of the strongest people in that I've ever come across in my life. And so it's an overreaching thing when we say strength has a greater purpose. Mm-hmm. We do feel that physical strength gives us the ability to express strength as a greater purpose in many different areas. So that's kind of the overriding mission: pursue, promote, and practice. One of our key principles is that we feel safety as part of proper performance, not opposed to proper performance. And that's, when you look at exercise in general, there's almost this expectation that I'm going to be sore, I'm going to end up getting hurt. I'm going to push hard and stuff happens. We like to kind of turn that around and say, no, safety is part of proper performance. If we get you dialed in, you should be able to produce more strength, more power. We should be able to use this for conditioning and really accomplish things that we're not just trying to beat people up. We're really trying to teach them. One of my other mentors, Dr. Ed Thomas, gave me a great quote when he was going to the Turner Hall in Davenport, Iowa to train. He said, I never went to work out. I went to learn. And in the process of learning, yes, I got sweaty, I got tired, I got fit, but that was never the goal. I wasn't doing something to just kind of get beat up or fit or whatever the case may be. I was learning. And so we've always had that mindset of skill progression and mastery of a skill. And to stay on kind of the old school mindset there for just a minute, this idea of mastery of a skill and working towards something. I've been swinging bells for over 18 years, still working on my kettlebell swing. I learn something every time I pick the bell up. I discover something about my get up or my press or whatever the case may be. And so we take this long-term approach of, as Pavel says, an inch wide, mile deep focus on the basics. And we have a great quote from a Special Forces personnel who said, the elite are just better at the basics than everybody else. And so people see the cornucopia of exercise possibility, and they see all of these different things and very unique exercises. When you boil it down, there's a few basics that if we focus on, we tend to get great results. The rest of it is what I like to call spices. We'll sprinkle in some unique stuff every now and then to maybe get you over a technical hurdle in your progression towards a great press or a great swing or whatever. But we're going to sprinkle that in. We're going to get over that technique hurdle, and we're going to keep the focus overall on the basics and making great progress. I don't know if I got off track there or not. I just started riffing.
No, that was wonderful. And I love the fact that you talked about the focus on simplicity and quality of movement, because, the craze in so many things. I mean, we get a lot of folks who we work with who do things like, CrossFit, and where there's a lot of complex movements, and there's also a very high injury rate, right? And, I love the community of CrossFit, and I think it's a great concept. But when you see a lot of complexity being put in, it does predispose people to getting hurt, right? And the focus, I think, on simplicity, right, and watching fatigue and making sure you get really good at certain things, by the nature of how that works, it's going to increase safety. And it's going to decrease the downtime from injuries because of the fact that you do put an awareness on that. I think that's tremendous.
Well, high skill plus fatigue is problematic.
Yeah.
So my focus on kettlebell training over the last X number of years, as I talked about, has really been, it's so easy, quotation marks, for me to get somebody swinging, doing a good get up, doing a good press, hitting those basics and refining those basics over time. We're able to narrow our focus and really make great progress. I had another quote in one of my articles. It was this 92-year-old, very famous cellist who said, somebody asked him why he was still practicing at 92, and he said, well, because I think I'm starting to make progress. This is somebody that's been playing the same instrument for how many decades, and at 92 is like, I think I'm finally starting to make some progress here. And we simply don't bring that mindset to us to our training. In old systems, they were, when you look at the Turnverein system and really things that were drawn from the Greeks, we had a martial component to fitness, which is your ability to respond to aggression appropriately. And a lot of our training systems draw from a military background. The Greeks were not just into getting fit for getting fit; they were warriors, and their ladies were warriors. And you can look at many different cultures, and they have this background from this war and self-defense sort of mindset. So there was a martial component. There was a restorative component, because the martial training kind of beat you up a little bit. And you needed a way to come back to center and be healthy, because you can't go do the things you've been training for if you're banged up. And then you had a pedagogical, a theoretical body of knowledge that supported everything else that you were doing. Well, fitness has become our martial art. We now almost approach it with that sort of aggressive mindset, where this is how we're displaying in a couple different directions to go on this. But the that mindset shift towards fitness is our martial art. Fitness is the goal. Instead of I'm getting fit to go do something. There is a difference in those things, and unfortunately, the modern lifestyle, and I'll throw myself under the bus first and foremost, is 4+ years ago I became very sedentary. I left a gym that I was managing and personal training book and things that I was doing that just had me up early and to bed late and up on my feet doing stuff most of the day. Well, I became very sedentary. I took on administrative positions where I'm tickety. I'm typing and just working on the computer and taking video calls and things like that. And then, due to the magic of the phone, I start looking at my health app on my iPhone. And I'm like, I didn't move very much today. Oh my God, I haven't moved in a year. I started to realize that my lifestyle had become incredibly sedentary, even though I was still training, still hitting my 3 or 4 days of training a week and was making progress in my training. My lifestyle was very sedentary. And so sometimes we have to use exercise as a proxy for a healthy lifestyle. Because I can't stop the 8 to 10 hours of being on the computer and doing calls a day. Like that's what I do. So I have to use exercise as a proxy for what a normal healthy lifestyle of being up and moving, and call it hunting and gathering if you want to go really from a sociological perspective. So getting up, getting moving is obviously very important. Sometimes exercise is our proxy for that. So I think I went off the rails there again. So the pulling this back towards StrongFirst and a focus on strength, one of our key principles, if not the key principle, is from Medvedev that strength is the foundation of all other physical qualities. And when you're too weak to get out of the chair, to go for your walk,
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem. Like there is a level of strength that supports everything else you want to be doing.
Yep, and I completely agree with that. And I can say that from two perspectives, right? As someone who's been an athlete for a long time, who's worked with athletes, but also someone who works with people who are physically deconditioned, and I see the impact of that the atrophy, the wasting away of their ability to have quality of life and movement. And I do have the benefit though of having a lot of people that I work with that as adults, when they even became older adults, all of a sudden they realize that I'm losing quality of life, and then adopted a lifestyle of fitness and a restored quality of life because they embraced the concept of getting up, becoming strong, and moving. And so I love very much what you said there, because really so much of the quality of our life as we age is going to be dictated by our ability to perform the things that we enjoy, because we're fit enough to handle those things, right? And maybe it's, grandma and grandpa wants to be able to go out and, play basketball with the grandkids or chase them around the yard. If that's what their goal is, right, then that's an amazing goal. But to be able to have the endurance and the strength to do that, not have to worry about getting hurt if you fall, not being able, not worrying about, not having the endurance to run around with them for an hour if you want to, that's a great goal, right?
Fantastic.
So, yeah, it is. And I think it's something that regardless of where you are in life, regardless of where your current health status is, embracing the fact that fitness is a lifestyle is something that supports your ability to do what you want to do at the level that you want to do if applied correctly.
100%.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk about kettlebells, kind of digress for a second here into something, because I think a lot of people don't know about kettlebells. I find that oftentimes there's a misunderstanding of kettlebells, right? Because I don't think it takes but 2 seconds to go on YouTube and see a million different people who are using them, and many of them using them very much the wrong way, right? And there's a lot of people use them specifically for weight loss, and people will say that you can't get strong and you can't build muscle mass and things like that. Whereas I've seen the exact opposite. But I'd like for you to speak into some of these misconceptions about the ability to actually make significant strength gains, and how it can be an instrumental part of a strength training program for anybody.
Well, kettlebells have formed the foundation of my training for the last, like I said, about 18 years. And during that time, I became the 11th person in the world to bend a red nail, which is a 7-inch, 5/16, 7-inch long, 5/16 thick piece of cold rolled steel. You do get to use some hand wraps, so they're not much; they're pretty thin. But and really, what gave me the base of strength to do that was my kettlebell training. I closed a Captain's and Crush #2 gripper the first time I tried, and I bent a 60 penny nail the first time I tried, and that was all based on my kind of background in kettlebell training. It took me into powerlifting, where I didn't do anything spectacular. At 198, I had a raw squat of 518, deadlift of 573. Certainly not world class or world record, but decent. And again, my base for that training was kettlebell training. And so, and I would say specifically the way Pavel teaches it, and with this focus towards strength and power and understanding just as a knife can be the tool of a surgeon to fix and heal, it can be the tool of bad things happening as well. It can cut your food and it can slice your finger. It's just a tool. The kettlebell is a tool. The principles, techniques, and the way we teach you to understand your breath, your pressurization and tension, how to apply that in a quick fashion for power, how to apply that in a low gear fashion for strength. We have all of those things built into our system, and that is, we're teaching you more about how to move you and how to manipulate your environment and the world around you than we are just the kettlebell. But the kettlebell, because of its thick handle, offset center of gravity, it really does present a unique training tool. Barbells, dumbbells are going to center with your hand. The center of mass of the kettlebell is 6 to 8 inches beyond your hand. And then we get more grip, and we get more, the weight is more alive. There's more skill involved in moving this thing around. And so I do think there's some very unique things about it. And then it comes down to the programming. If you want to program for fat loss, there's a way to do that. You want to program for strength, way to do that. You want to program for hypertrophy, there's a way to do that. And I can accomplish that whether we're talking about your body weight, the barbell, or the kettlebell. But the kettlebell does, because it is so, I think, easily adopted. It's space friendly, it's time friendly. Like there's so many things about this that, and I have a couple articles on StrongFirst about getting started into your kettlebell training that kind of setting up your what we call a courage corner. And that was one of the things that stuck with me in Pavel's original RKC Russian Kettlebell Challenge book was this concept of a courage corner where you went to do your work, and there was something very that grabbed me. There was something I really liked about that. And so my courage corners in my office, actually, there's a smattering of about, I don't know, there's probably 10 kettlebells in here. So you don't need that many, but 18 years in, you collect a few.
It's funny. I was literally just reading that last night about the courage corner because I go back through and review the books quite often, and I know we've talked a lot about kettlebells, but I do want to make sure we talk about the emphasis with body weight training and barbell, because I remember the very first time I read Naked Warrior.
Yeah.
And for those of you who have never really looked into body weight training as a strength training tool, read this book, try it, and tell me you've never felt stronger in your life, right? Like doing a one-arm push-up or a pistol or any of those movements, when you start really dialing in on just doing body weight movements with the kind of control that it takes to do those with really good form and technique, it's amazing the way that you can generate tremendous amounts of strength and force that will carry over into anything that you do athletically, whatever it might be.
100%. And I think what's important there is when most people think body weight training, they think calisthenics and they're thinking higher repetition. There is a way to manipulate internal and external leverage to create true strength training opportunities with body weight training. And this is actually where FMS and StrongFirst and Pavel, this is where some of the initial melding of the minds occurred, because Gray got Naked Warrior, and Pavel was saying you should be able to do this on your right side and your left side. And Pavel was referring a little bit more to a symmetry of strength. But when you can do a pistol on the right, a single leg squat on the right and the left, one arm push up on the right and the left, you're actually displaying a pretty good blend of mobility and stability and strength and ability to control your body. And so body weight training forms this foundation of knowing how to produce tension and direct that tension in the right area, just knowing how to use your own body. And so that is something that transfers into everything else that you're going to do. And so our SFB, StrongFirst Body Weight, and our body weight course are excellent ways to begin learning that skill of tension and what we call the dominanta, or the ability to direct that tension to enhance the movement lift thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah. My former rehab assistant, Patrick, we sent him to do the kettlebell training, and then he also went to the SFB course. And I have to give some praise to it, because he loved all of the courses and read all the books. But when he went to the SFB course and dove into body weight training for the first time, for a young man who was a high level college wrestler, did a lot of powerlifting style, bodybuilder style training for his entire career, he came back and said, this absolutely changed the way that I think about training, because he had never realized what he was capable of unlocking in his own body when he learned how to produce force in the way that he was taught at the SFB. And that was one of the most important things, because like what you talked about with the ability to create tension and produce force and have symmetry is what a lot of us, just because we oftentimes avoid recognizing when we're out of balance and don't really go through and self-assess. When you can lock in and harness that kind of force, the ability to produce force and have control and have tension and also reduce your risk for injuries when you are exercising or performing, it's tremendous. And so I remember when he came back from the course, we talked for probably a solid hour about this. And he's like, this was the most amazing thing I've ever done. I didn't realize I was able to do this. He came in and, he had never been able to do a pistol squat. Like, he watched it, tried it. He went to the course and he was able to come back with doing a pistol squat after the training and just the techniques that he learned. he said, it was the most amazing thing. I found more out about my body in that one weekend than in all the training he'd ever done with all the coaches he'd ever worked with, period. This is a guy who has a CSCS already, has a bachelor's in exercise sci, and he said that one weekend opened his eyes like nothing ever had.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And one of the things about the StrongFirst School of Strength is we have these consistent principles that come with us through the three modalities. And so obviously, to what we've been talking about, SFB is how you apply those principles to moving and working with your own body. Then we apply them to the barbell, and then we apply them and have always applied them to the kettlebell. Mm-hmm. So there is a consistency of both these philosophical and action principles that occur throughout the StrongFirst School of Strength. And it is some people master their one-arm push-up and they've got their half body weight press. And, it's this, you kind of don't know what the missing ingredient is for some people, but they're going to find it within the things that we do.
Yeah, it's tremendous. Just absolutely love the focus on this. So, as you know, I'm a chiropractor. And so, of course, I'm always doing research on making sure that we're protecting our patients. And, I was reading Stu McGill's work a while ago about when he had Pavel out to his lab, and he wanted to do some research on what kind of force the core was able to produce when doing a kettlebell swing. And I remember reading, and he said, and almost I quote, that it was the highest core activation he had ever seen amongst all of the athletes he'd ever worked with. And when I read that, I had to stop and reread it 3 or 4 times to make sure I was reading it correctly, because I already knew that I had seen some really cool benefits with doing it myself. But when I read that and saw that, it lit up a whole different concept for me about, instead of doing isolated core training, you're doing core every time that you're doing these movements, and you're creating this tremendous level of strength and stability. And the place where we need it most is in the lower lumbar spine.
Yep.
And
one of the things, like if you look at some of Pavel's older products with bulletproof abs and mm-hmm. things like that, there is a style of strength training focused mm-hmm. abdominal, and it's it's a messy conversation, because mm-hmm. what most people, and I'm gonna have to use the C word, the core. So the core training is different from abdominal training, mm-hmm. and most of what we see is abdominal training. Right. It's high rep, it's going for the burn, it's how long can you hold this plank, whereas core training, there has to be an aspect of that is reactive and has you interacting with your environment and properly responding to perturbations and stress. And then there should be a strength focus to training the core. I want you to be able to do something like we call it a hard style sit back. I want your ability to produce force and tension within that hard style sit back to be so great you can't do more than 3 reps. Like, that's the kind of focus that we're looking for. If you're knocking out 100 crunches, cool. Not strength training. So we want to have this strength focus. So there's this blend of really strength focused abdominal work. And I mean, you can go back and look at Eugene Sandow and some of the old strongmen who had this same strength focus in their quote core or abdominal training, and bringing that, and then knowing how to apply it quickly, how to direct your tension and force and lock in at the right moment. It's in some ways I take it for granted, because I kind of grew up, I'll say, within this system, and so it's always neat to have a chance to dive into it again.
Thank you for listening to the Growing Healthy Families podcast, the world's #1 source for health education. Make sure to go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a review. Make sure to follow us on social media at the links listed in the show notes, and let us know what area of health you are struggling with, so we can get you and your family on the road to epic health.